Good morning and welcome to The Skinny for Friday, June 14th. I'm Mitch Perry, senior political reporter for the Florida Phoenix, joined by our full crew today for the first time in more than a month. Ray Aroa, editor-in-chief of Creative Loafing here at Tampa Bay's Alt Weekly, is back in the house along with author and freelance reporter Ben Montgomery. Good morning, gents.
So happy to have Ray back.
It's awesome to be back in here, guys. It's good to see everybody.
Yeah, it's great to have you back here, Ray. You missed our fundraiser a couple weeks ago. I wanted to give a collective thank you to those who did contribute to the Skinny 2 weeks ago when we had our summer fundraising show. Final numbers released this week show that we raised a little over $1,400, which was just shy of our $1,500 goal. So if anybody wants to get us over the hump, hey, phone number is open right now. What is it? 813-239-9663.
Or donate online at WMNF.org.
Thank you, Ben. Absolutely.
If somebody donates $100 right now, I'll leave for today.
We don't want
pay
you to
$100 to keep Ray on.
Yeah, okay.
If you want Ray to stay, call us now.
On the show this morning, it's been about 6 weeks since the Florida's 6-week abortion ban went into place here in Florida. We're going to talk with a representative from a group that helps women get abortions out of state to see how they're faring. We'll also spend a moment, I'd like to anyway, on my question to Ron DeSantis that I asked him earlier this week when he was in Tampa about his newly formed political action committee that led to him basically sputtering about how people will be able to bring, quote, 20 joints to a school if Amendment 3 is passed this fall by Florida voters. Yes, he said that. But first, well, in less than an hour now, the deadline for all candidates running for state or local office here in Florida will be closed, and we'll know officially who was qualified to be on the August 20th primary election, or in some cases, they'll go straight to the ballot in November. Now, here in the Tampa Bay area, in Florida's 65th House District, which encompasses much of South Tampa and some parts of Northeast Hillsborough County, the seat is currently held by Republican Karen Gonzalez Pittman. One of the Democrats who is qualified for the primary to potentially face her in November is Ashley Brundage. Ms. Brundage is the founder and president of Empowering Differences, which provides leadership and training development programs for companies. She's a mother of two and is also trying to make history this year by becoming Florida's first transgender elected official, if that were to happen. Ashley Brundage, welcome to the Skinny here on WMNF.
Oh my goodness, I'm so honored to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. Great to have you here. We should say that there is one other opponent who's qualified, Democratic opponent who's qualified for HD 65. That's Nathan Kuipers. We tried to get him on the show later today. He's not available. We'll probably get him on next week. So we'll do that. First question, Ashley, why do you want to serve in the Florida legislature?
Oh my goodness. I have served all parts of our Tampa Bay area, the state of Florida and beyond through years of advocacy work. I actually ran a Chamber of Commerce in the Tampa Bay area for 5 years. I built an economic empowerment program. I got veterans and people with disabilities and LGBTQ plus business owners added to the city procurement processes for the city of Tampa. And then I've advocated across the state for more inclusive workplaces to grow revenue for organizations. It's literally what I do is I help organizations make more money. And so why can't I take my awesome work experience and my lived experiences and really bring that to Tallahassee to move the conversation away from so many culture war type conversations that really are bad for business here in Florida. One of the things I'm really been a passionate person about is championing the state of Florida for more tourism dollars. I brought a $12 million economic impact event to the downtown Tampa region by selling out the entire Marriott Water Street Hotel and Embassy Suites Hotel for people from more than 40 countries who came here in 2019 for the International LGBT Business Convention. I actually did that bid. I won a key to the city of Tampa for my advocacy work when I did that. And what I'll tell you is that our tourism numbers are looking great right now. But we're going to run into a little bit of a problem because big conventions book 3 to 7 years in advance. And the ones that have been choosing not to come to Florida because of our political landscape in the governor's office and on the state Republican Party is not serving all 22 million Floridians.
Let me just stop you there because you're right in terms of the booking, how it goes in advance. Because when some of these laws came down the last couple of years, or in fact, I certainly remember last year, and I wrote a couple stories on that because there were some groups that were just booked a few months in advance and canceled. And so there was some immediate, obviously, reportage on that. And yet, again, you can talk to Santiago Hirata here in Tampa, or Dana Young, who was the, Enterprise Florida, or not, I'm sorry, not Enterprise Florida, what's the,
Visit Florida.
Thank you. They got rid of Enterprise Florida, boasting about that our numbers are greater than ever. But you're saying, again, a couple of years down the line, this is where some of this, not only, we've also seen the black community, right, with the NAACP last year had a travel advisory as well about some of the laws that have come down.
Yeah, certain groups, organizations are doing travel bans, and they're literally telling people not to come to Florida because of our bills like Don't Say Gay, which obviously was settled in the courts. But all this stuff literally moves us away from the actual economic important issues that affect all 22 million Floridians. And so me being elected to the state legislature will send an inclusive ripple signal across the entire southeastern United States that Florida is open for business.
Right, because, Axios just wrote a couple weeks ago that Florida is basically been labeled as America's, quote, America's least gay-friendly state because some of these laws that have come down the last few years.
Yeah, and honestly, another thing is that while I'm going to be making history on something about me and my personal life, which really has no impact except on anything, but I think the even more history-making thing is the fact that I used to be the DEI person for PNC Bank and 60,000 employees as their national vice president of diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Let's talk about that, because DEI is like DOA almost seemingly right now in America. Again, we're speaking with Ashley Brundage, a candidate for House District 65 here in the Florida legislature, in the House coming up in August 20th. In fact, I think, let me find this. There was a bill, Rick Scott has actually just filed a bill. Yeah, he's joined J.D. Vance, and let's see, it's called the Dismantle DEI Act, which would eliminate all federal DEI programs and funding for federal agencies, contractors which receive federal funding, organizations which receive federal grants, and educational accreditation agencies. Let me quote from Senator Rick Scott. He said, and this is a press release that came out, I think, just 2 days ago, quote, "Under the Biden administration, we continue to see taxpayer dollars funding Democrats' push for the, quote, far-left policy that throws merit away for radical ideology. Americans have had enough. Taxpayers shouldn't be forced to foot the bill for federal government's agencies to push their woke DEI agenda. And that is why I'm proud to join my colleagues in introducing the Dismantle DEI Act." Ashley, it's been, and we've seen it in Tallahassee as well,
I'm ready. I'm ready on this. So you don't even ask the question, and I'm ready on this.
Exactly. DEI is under attack. If it's not already gone in here in Florida, what you believe that's obviously a mistake.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Well, I mean, they're saying Florida is a state where DEI is supposed to die, and which I think is ironically ridiculous. And we know that there are 22 million Floridians. Well, the definition of diversity is the presence of differences that make us each unique. So, by definition, there are 22 million diverse Floridians because every single Floridian is different from the person sitting next to them. We have different lived experiences. We come from different communities. And you know what else? This word equity scares people too. Mm-hmm. And so let's talk about that, because equity also means that it gives the opportunity for people to get exactly what they need for their life and how they move about their lives. So I have 2 kids, and I don't know about you, but as a mom, I have to make sure that my kids have what they need to survive in this world. But if I had 4 kids, if I have 1 kid, if I have 0 kids, then that means I don't need as many resources, or I need more resources. If I have a piece of steak, and I have 4 kids, and all of a sudden I have to be like, oh, well, we've got to cut this steak a little smaller and make sure that everybody gets something. This is what equity is. We do this every single day as Florida families. Every single person practices equity work. So why is it that what's being weaponized? It's being weaponized to scare people. And we're not here to scare people. We're here to actually help people get the resources they need to grow as a Florida whole. And inclusion also shouldn't be scary, because inclusion is literally the opportunity for us to learn and grow as people. And that's what every program I've ever built that had DEI in mind was, an opportunity for someone to learn about it in a community and then go and sell more goods and services to make more money from that community. And that's what happened when I became a part-time bank teller at PNC Bank while I was homeless living in Tampa, Florida. I showed up on day one, and ultimately I started building relationships in my community, and I started bringing those people to bank at PNC Bank because it wasn't people they were literally marketing to immediately. So by them practicing diversity, I became the number one revenue producing employee for 3 straight years out of the entire bank around the country.
Let me bring up what I've heard. Critics will talk about DEI, and they focus on equity, as you mentioned, versus they say equality is what we want to aspire to, and equity is like a different way of getting to that what you want ultimately, which is to have fairness for all, essentially.
Well, I mean, I think that there's a big difference between equality and equity because if, we all have the same amount of time on the microphone here in the room, maybe that might not be an equitable situation right now, but it's all based on what is the actual need. And the actual need in the state of Florida is to actually lower the cost of insurance and not prop up fake bills that aren't actually going to help people. This is exactly why this work is so important.
Right.
If I might, Mitch, I've been curious to see how and whether tourism bureaus handle the political feel of today, the political temperature. And I was flipping through the New York Times Magazine 2 weeks ago and saw a double truck ad from Visit Lauderdale. And pictured is the beach, and then beyond that, the ocean. And the Atlantic, and then in front of it, standing on the beach in a line, all of their backs to us. This is a diverse array of people. And I'm just noticing looking at it now, there's an elderly gentleman, there's a kid, there's a young man.
Everyone under the sun.
A young man with a rainbow flag on his swim trunks, and so on and so forth. Welcome everyone under the sun from Visit Lauderdale. Are you seeing more of that type of thing? Sort of tourism bureaus sort of overtly speaking out against what Republicans are
I actually do business with some of the tourism convention and visitors bureaus across the world. Those are my clients sometimes. And for example, like I literally was hired by the Kentucky Travel Association to go across the state of Kentucky to send an inclusive signal that Kentucky is open for business. And so part of what I'm going to do when I'm elected is literally by serving in Tallahassee, I'll be immediately sending an inclusive signal that the state of Florida is open for business and that people should come and spend their hard-earned money to be here in the state of Florida. And so the tourism and conventions bureaus, they know exactly what the big conferences and the big conventions are looking for, and they're looking for that inclusive signal. We
are speaking with Ashley Brundage. She's a candidate for House District 65 here in Florida. Today is the day to qualify, or actually she's already qualified. Today's a deadline for candidates running for state and local office in Florida here. We want to talk about your platform more. I know you talk about insurance a lot, but do want to bring up this issue about what happened in the courts the other day. A federal judge in Tallahassee ruled on Tuesday that Florida's ban on puberty blockers and hormone replacement therapy for transgender minors and restrictions for adults are both unconstitutional. U.S. District Judge Robert Hinkle, he sided with the plaintiffs in the class action case. He wrote, quote, "The federal courts have a role to play in upholding the Constitution and laws. The state of Florida can regulate as needed, but cannot flatly deny transgender individuals safe and effective medical treatment. Treatment with medications routinely provided to others with the state's full approval, so long as the purpose is not to support the patient's transgender identity." This is a law that was, of course, passed last year, May of 23. It barred doctors and nurses from prescribing or administering transition-related medication to those under 18 and exposed medical providers to criminal liability and professional discipline if they did so, among other provisions. DeSantis was here in Tampa Wednesday. He was asked about this. He says they were going to appeal, and he says basically that there was the case, I think, in Alabama, where the courts essentially, the U.S. Court of Appeals, the 11th Circuit, previously overturned a decision by a federal judge in Alabama who ruled against transgender restrictions for minors in that state. But Hinkle said the Florida case was different because of the legislative record showing public officials animus towards transgender identity. Your thoughts?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I mean, being a proud out woman of transgender experience is part of my experience, is part of my past, but it is part of my presence every day. It's a lot of work to be authentic and live your life. That kind of work that you have to do to go against the grain in society, I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. And so to think that someone actually would want to do this in a stunt, or want to do this just to make a scene or any of those things is absolutely ridiculous. I think the politicians have made their case very, very clear that they want to scare us and get us to leave the state of Florida. That's the ultimate intended goal, is about population migration. The Republican Party has been playing this playbook now across all different types of differences, not just the transgender community, the LGBT community with Don't Say Gay. They've been doing it to the African American education and not talking about Black history and trying to teach that there were benefits of slavery, which is absolutely atrociously ridiculous, because they're not even having a conversation about reparations. And so literally this is, and then obviously let's also mention that women's right to choose and the ability for people to get the government out of making decisions about people's bodies, that's exactly what this is about. This is all about the fact that they want to be in control of what somebody else decides to do behind closed doors, and the only person that someone should ever have a conversation with about these kinds of things is a licensed mental health professional. That could be a counselor, that could be a therapist, that could be a doctor, that could be a physician's assistant, somebody who went to school to learn how to take care of humans. And why is it that we're having so many of these conversations? It's to shield you from the actual real issue, which is insurance, which is economic empowerment for small businesses. So that's why these are the three things that I'm really running on.
Yeah, and it's going to be tough. Okay, so if you're successful on August 20th, you're going against Karen Gonzalez-Pittman. I looked at the registration numbers the other day. I think there's roughly 10,000 more Republicans than Democrats in HD 65. So like in many other situations, we've talked about it a lot in the show the last year, Democrats are looking at a very different electorate than just it was a few years ago in terms of their electoral possibilities. So how will you, get your way through a district that is majority Republican in November?
Yeah, well, it's the 30% of the voters that are independent or no party affiliation. They're the secret sauce to our win. And the Republicans are scared about that because they've been running on all these issues that are all about scaring people and hurting our economy long term. And that we're going to talk about how we're actually going to help people and actually help our economy. So the NPA and no party affiliation voters, they vote on the issues. They don't vote on a slate from the Republican Party or the Democratic Party that gets sent to their house and says, hey, vote for all of our candidates, yay. They actually vote on the issues. And I'm running on the actual issues, lowering the cost of insurance, getting the government out of making decisions about people's bodies, and economic empowerment for small businesses. So that's going to be the issues. We're going to build the coalition. I've hired a team that worked field on the Barack Obama campaigns in Florida. They're part of my campaign staff, that we actually have a campaign staff and build a coalition of people. We've already been gathering endorsements from organizations like the whole statewide endorsement from Roos List last week, which is the Democratic pro-choice women's organization. They've never endorsed a candidate like me, so it's history making. But it's history making because we can actually elect women up and down the ticket. And I also got the endorsement from Equality Florida, which is really shocking considering my primary opponent is out and gay male. So the fact that Equality Florida is endorsing me sends the signal of who people should vote for on August 20th.
Can I riff a little bit off of that NPA comment? In April, Axios cited some Fox 13 reports. In 2022, you received a letter from Ron DeSantis congratulating you on winning the Spirit of Community Award. And you talked about to Fox how that does open the door for you for NPAs. But do you think that could hurt you, that letter from DeSantis?
In your Democratic primary?
No, that's not going to hurt me in the Democratic primary because honestly, the Democrats want to elect the best candidate that's going to beat Karen Pittman and flip the supermajority in the state house.
Have you talked to the governor since then? Does he know you wrote it?
So I have a whole story. I can tell the DeSantis story if you really want it.
Yes, please.
So many friends of mine nominated me for the Florida Commission on the Status of Women's Community Spirit Award because of my work driving economic empowerment, bringing business to the state of Florida, and mentoring and advocating for children and women across the state of Florida. And so my nomination letter mentioned the fact that I'm a proud out woman of transgender experience 3 times, including the part where we submitted my bio in the nomination. So I certainly wasn't hiding who I am, and nor do I. Anyone could type me in on Google, Ashley Brundage, or you can go to ashleybrundage.com, and you will have a field day of fun when you type my name in on Google. I think that's I'm on the first 50 pages is all articles written about me and my advocacy work, because the work that I've been doing is so important. And so I showed up to win the award and at the luncheon during Pride Month, ironically, and he didn't show up. He was nowhere to be found.
Now, where was this at?
It was in West Palm, and at the Manatee Lagoon in West Palm. And I showed up, and the video you can find the video and watch the luncheon because it's on the state's website. Even though DeSantis team actually removed me as a winner from their website.
No.
Really?
Yes, that happened. And so
how quickly afterwards?
Well, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
So I win the award. I walked in the door. They actually walked up to me. They had sent the agenda for this event in advance, outlining that me and the 6 other women who won the award were going to each have 2 minutes to speak and accept the award. And so I walk in, and then they walked over to me and they said, "Oh, well, our program is running over, and so we're going to have to cut the acceptance speeches from the agenda."
Wow.
And I'm thinking to myself, oh, wow, okay. Well, the speeches were from 1:30 to 1:45. The program ended at 1:30. It was not running over. That was a lie. And the DeSantis administration and the governor's office have been lying to you. They've been lying to you about a lot of stuff, building these culture wars that really don't exist. And all they do is create division amongst the 22 million people fighting amongst each other when we really should be working towards a common goal.
To that note, what would you have said?
Oh, well, I had a whole speech prepared.
How did it go? Ballpark.
The speech that I was going to give, I actually gave it a month later at the International LGBT Business Convention because they said, "Oh, we're going to give you an award since you didn't get a chance to speak at that luncheon." And I was going to tell them that I think that they muted me because I was going to say gay. I was going to say trans. I was going to say a lot of things I was going to say diversity, equity, inclusion. I was going to say access, equality. I was going to say all these things that people are scared about when we don't actually have to scare people about these topics. All they do is create more business opportunity for people in our state. And so after I won that, I kind of shared it on social media, and then Politico ran it in an article called DeSantis Land, which was really fun. And then I started getting contacted, and I was the #1 news story on November 8th last year when USA Today ran a profile piece on me. And then that opened the door. I was getting Breitbart was writing about me, Axios, UK Daily Mail. And then when I actually announced that I was running for office, all of a sudden Ron DeSantis, his team or his campaign at the time, and rest in peace for that, that they were all contacted by hundreds of news sources asking for comment about why he gave an award to me. And he had no comment every single time from all 3 sources until I announced that I'm running for office.
And then there was a comment. And
then finally he provided comment to the UK Daily Mail that he would have never given me an award had he known that I was a transgender woman, which is a lie. Because if he had read the actual nomination before signing the letter, then he would have known. And obviously, that's not the case.
We are talking to Ashley Brundage. She was trying to make history, be the first transgender female elected to the Florida legislature. She's on the ballot on August 20th. A couple other things we want to talk about here, Ashley. Let's go back to some of the issues here. We know what you're running on here. Let's talk about guns, if we could. There was an anniversary of the tragedy at the Pulse nightclub just a few years ago, or 8 years ago, I guess it was, right? 49 people killed, 53 wounded. The legislature did not act at that time. It was in June. They did act 2 years later when we had the Parkland tragedy in 2018. And there was, some would say, for Florida, actually, pretty shockingly, some solid gun laws were implemented at that time. Now, since then, there's been some attempts in the past legislative session to get rid of some of those laws, such as you have to be 21 years old to buy a long gun. You have to have a waiting period to buy a gun. Where are you at on that? Do you think we could do more with gun laws in Florida? Are you okay with where we're at right now on that?
Yeah, I would say, well, number one, I actually lost 2 friends at the Pulse nightclub shooting. And so literally being affected in that sense, I have never been involved in a mass shooting situation, but having lost people is so incredibly hurtful. And when I think about this, and obviously like the Pulse, it was an emotional moment for the LGBTQ plus community, but it's really an emotional moment for anyone, because we all have gender, we all have sexuality, we all have these things that give us an existence in the world. And so I think, and we're all affected. We all have now probably known someone that has either been in or around a mass shooting. And this stuff is ridiculous. Yeah. There's so much more that we can do. I mean, I have gotten the stamp as a gun sense candidate for Moms Demand Action because I'm doing the work. I'm filling out all the endorsement applications, unlike my primary opponent. And so I'm working with the organizations to find out what's important to them so that way we can make sure that we have a solid candidate going against Karen Gonzalez Pittman. And yes, there's so much more that we can do in the gun arena. We just have to be smart about it. I'm not talking about taking away people's guns, but let's just make it a little bit more. Let's use some common sense on some of these things. Right.
Amendment 3 is another big issue on the ballot. You talked about Amendment 4, which I know you're strongly supporting abortion rights. Amendment 3, Governor DeSantis was back here, like I said, in Tampa the other day. In fact, can I mention, this is what I brought up to him. So I got to ask him a question on Wednesday about this new political action committee that he has now called the Florida Freedom Fund. And so wanted to know, what is he going to do with that? Because it's fascinating, because Ron DeSantis, he's not running for president now, but there's an election this fall, and how is he going to exert his power? And so I asked him, he actually cut me off halfway through the question, but it was about, tell me more about this fund. Are you going to get involved with it? There's talk about you campaigning against Amendment 3 and 4. And then he leaped into talking about the state attorney's races, actually, Andrew Warren and Monique Worrell. He's going to get involved with that. But then he really, he's very against this Amendment 3, the cannabis law, constitutional amendment that would legalize recreational cannabis for people at 21 and older. He talked again about how the state's going to smell throughout the whole, state. It's going to be reeking of marijuana. And then he actually said this comment about people are going to be, I got to find this, okay? So because this is pretty, out there. And I think that maybe some people can make arguments about whether this amendment is, we should pass it or not. But some of the arguments are kind of out of the Reefer Madness, playbook here.
Appropriate for Tampa.
Well,
the birth of Reefer Madness.
Yeah, no, we said, let's see, here it is. Because he says, how the court let that language on the ballot, I will never understand. If it does not do justice, the amendment language says that there can be no penalties for use or possession, civil, criminal, anything. I think it's going to be very difficult for businesses to operate without that infringing on them. I think you're going to see people, you'll be able to bring, 20 joints to an elementary school. Is that really going to be good for the state of Florida? I don't think so.
Okay, where do we start here, right? So the number 2 issue on my platform, besides lowering the cost of insurance, is getting the government out of making decisions about people's bodies. And having access to recreational marijuana is exactly what that is. It's a way of alleviating, of overloading yourself with the pharmaceutical industry who's literally paying all of the bills. Look at the campaign donations. You'll know exactly how Ron DeSantis is funded. It's big pharma. It's all these special interests. interest. So at the end of the day, thinking about the fact that people have an opportunity to take marijuana as a way of circumventing from spending money on endless pharmaceutical drugs and endless doctor visits potentially, I mean, this is a great thing. I mean, it's going to generate $4.1 billion in revenue for the state of Florida. Here we are talking about money again. And why is it that we're not thinking about that $4.1 billion as an immediate way of literally providing Floridians a relief on their homeowners insurance or their other insurances? We could literally give a $200 credit per person.
I think actually $400 million up to that, because I actually wrote about this. The state economist wrote about it could be between $150 million per year up to like 300, 400, something like that. So it's definitely a lot of money, though.
Yeah.
No question about it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I read a research report that said it's an estimated $4.1 billion.
Okay, I haven't seen that part. Yeah,
from the sale. Sure. Because so let's really put it out there. Okay. Everyone who wants to smoke marijuana is getting marijuana.
Right.
They're literally getting it from somewhere else.
Right.
And those places are generating the revenue.
Yeah.
So why is it that we're not taking advantage of that and having them buy it right here in Florida? We can do everything we can do to generate money right here in Florida.
I want to make sure before we let Ashley go, any other questions from our panelists here?
Oh boy.
No, I was glad to ask that question about the letter from Ron DeSantis.
Yeah,
so thank you for that story.
DeSantis story.
All right, so I think we'll leave it there. Ashley Brundage, again, if you haven't heard of her before, now you have. She's running for the House District 65 seat. And again, that is in, where's the district actually?
So that's downtown Tampa, that's Harbor Island, that's Davis Island, that's Bayshore, that's West Shore, Soho, Hyde Park, and then it takes a weird, drawn-out turn around.
Gerrymandered turn.
Your words, not mine. It takes a weird round-out turn and avoids the airport, which I think is really ironic also, and goes up the coast there, and then it starts heading up to the northern parts of Hillsborough County that are not South Tampa. It's like, why can't we just have a seat for South Tampa? There's definitely enough people that live there if you just had picked the parts that are actually really South Tampa.
But so that's the seat. And so, again, you're on the ballot against Nathan Kuipers on the August 20th Democratic primary.
Yes.
And then if you're successful, of course, you'll run against Karen Gonzalez-Pittman in November.
Yes.
So, well, it's great to have you here in the studio. Ashley Brundage, thank you so much for joining us here in WMNF.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
All right, we're going to make a little transition here.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about abortion, and as our next guest settles in, because of extreme bans on abortion in the surrounding southern states, Florida was recently a major access point for reproductive health care in this part of the country, but not anymore. That's because it's been 44 days since Florida's 6-week ban on abortion went into effect, with exceptions for only rare circumstances for some vulnerable communities and when a mother's or a fetus's life is in danger. We have North Carolina. It has a 12-week ban, but there's also a 72-hour waiting period with in-person requirements. So most folks now travel to places like Virginia, Illinois, Washington, D.C., where abortion is legal to get the health care that they need. But even those places now are seeing an influx of patients. This November, Mitch, as you alluded to, Florida voters have a chance to enshrine the right to reproductive care into the state constitution. That's Amendment 4. But the Tampa Bay Abortion Fund has been hard at work in the meantime. Last year, the nonprofit assisted nearly 2,700 people in Hillsborough and Pinellas, helped them navigate the financial and logistical barriers to abortion access, in part by providing funding assistance and practical and travel support at numerous out-of-state clinics for Floridians who are over 6 weeks into their pregnancy. The fund does have an intake voicemail and form. Those are still open. Appointment funding is still available. We'll link to the fund on the blog on WMNF. But earlier this week, the Florida Phoenix reported that leaders of abortion funds across the country were sharing the hardships that their grassroots organizations have faced in the U.S. since the Dobbs decision was overruled. Here to talk about that with WMNF today is Bree Wallace, Director of Case Management at the Tampa Bay Abortion Fund. Bree, thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Bree, you're also the founder of the Tampa Period Pantry, and I saw that box from the other side of the street when I was driving up Tampa Street outside of Shuffle.
What is that?
Yeah, can you tell us real quick about what that is?
Yeah, for sure. So I have 9 of them. My 10th one is actually going to go up this week or next week at the Sustainable Living Project on Sly. So it's pretty much like a free little library, but for menstrual hygiene products. So tampons, pads, menstrual cups, wipes, things like that. And it's throughout Tampa, Palm Harbor, and St. Pete right now.
Right on. All line item things in a line item veto from the governor this week.
I'm sure you noticed that, Bree. Yeah.
Yep.
So I think I pretty much characterized the work of the fund pretty well. But how has the nature of the work you do at the fund and the challenges of that work changed since May 1st when that 6-week ban went into effect? Or has it not changed at all?
It definitely has changed, and I think it will continue to change as time goes on. Last year, when it was 15 weeks, a major part of my job was helping people travel, but travel here. So It was like people from Louisiana and Georgia and Texas that came over here. But now it's shifted, and people can't come here anymore because it's 6 weeks, and it wouldn't really make sense to travel to another state at that time. So now really my job is surrounded by getting people out of state from here. So to places like Illinois, DC, Virginia, Maryland, places like that. So that's been the vast difference. And then working more with out-of-state clinics and funds rather than my local funds, who I still work with, but definitely have a lot more people on my plate now.
Your job is so people-centric, I think you had said you help more than 4,000 people, and that's like a lot of human emotion to carry. And I was curious, what does the emotional toll of your work feel like, and how does it both like carry you and burden you as you move through your own life?
Yeah, I love this question because I've never actually got asked this in an interview, and I think it's extremely important because anyone who works within like social services or case management, they know that this is the most rewarding job and also the roughest job out there. Like, this is a field where you take your work home with you, and it really does sit with you. And no 2 days are ever the same. You'll have a day where you're feeling on top of the world, and then the next day you just want to cry the whole day. And I love my job, and I think it's a job that can definitely burn you out if you let it. So, putting up boundaries is always a huge thing, and not working after hours and not always saying yes to everything. But in the end, I do feel for my clients really the most with this because sometimes I'm the only person they ever have to talk to in this situation. They don't want to tell their friends or their family. So really, it's just kind of me sitting there and listening to them, and a lot of time just letting them vent because they just need to get it out. And this is a really hard decision for people to make. And I mean, I'm not not licensed or anything, but definitely listen and try to help. But it does take an emotional toll, but I do love my job.
Can you give us an anecdote, or, without naming names or giving away too many specifics, can you tell, like, who is your typical client, if that exists?
Yeah.
Or what are some of the stories that people have coming to you?
For sure. So, a lot of people I talk to are people who are, people who are low income, who can't afford something like this. A lot of them are young people in their 20s, sometimes their 30s, and they're scared. They've never been through something like this. And really, the biggest type I talk to is people who have never traveled in their life. They have never been on a plane, especially when it was people from Louisiana. They had never been in an Uber, a hotel, a plane. It is just talking them through all of that. And a lot of it is them just trying to figure out all the logistics. I have people who are crying because, they can't take off work or they can't find childcare. So we really try to work with them to say, like, if you're off on this certain day, we can try to get you an appointment out of state there, and we can cover childcare costs and things like that. But
Bree, again, we've been at 6 weeks, I think, roughly since the 6-week law went into effect. How significantly different is your days now from just 2 months ago, say?
Yeah, it hasn't. So here's the weird thing. After a ban, it takes like a month or two for things to really change and people to realize that there is a ban, to realize that resources are out there. I think within like the next month, we'll see people who are maybe a little bit farther along, like 10 or 12 weeks, who just didn't know where to go in that time. But now it's more so I have a lot of cases who will go out of state, so it's me talking on and off with them, and just playing travel agent, booking a lot of flights, a lot of hotels, kind of making like itineraries for them. So kind of still the same, just a different aspect now of people leaving the state and not coming to this state.
And by the way, if you're just tuning in, joining us right now is Bree Wallace, Director of Case Management at Tampa Bay Abortion Fund. We're talking about the challenges of the work the fund does, especially in the light of this 6-week ban. If you go to the website, it says in big, bold letters, abortion is still legal in Florida. Can we talk about what that means and why that is so important to mention right now still?
Yes. So there is a 6-week ban, of course, but there are still people who are under 6 weeks who know that they are pregnant and get abortions done. So it's not like it's totally banned here. And I know a lot of people will call it like a near total abortion ban, which it is. I mean, a lot of people don't know that, but you can still get care here. And I mean, I care about our local clinics immensely. I love them and I would want nothing to happen to them. So I really try to make sure that people still go there and get abortions done, or even just get ultrasounds done, because you don't know how far along you are. So if you are 8 weeks, you know, you're going to have to go out of state, but it's better to know than to not.
And last year, the fund helped with more than $650,000 in appointment costs, more than $67,000 in practical support. Those are those plane tickets, the hotel stays. 2,660 callers, including 303 who traveled out of their home state, as you mentioned. Just to kind of give a scale, does it still cost about $2,000 for an out-of-state abortion? And can you talk about whether or not the Tampa Bay Abortion Fund specifically has experienced this cooling effect in donations that similar orgs have described recently?
Yeah, so the $2,000, it really fluctuates. So the actual abortion cost is usually about $500 to $20,000, depending how far.
Really?
Yes. It can get up to $20,000, especially for people who are in like second or third trimester who are going to specific clinics. So it can get very expensive.
And you support those people too?
Yes.
Okay.
And when it does get that high, we work with other sibling funds within Florida or other states. We all pitch in a lot with each other and work very closely together. But really, a big thing that fluctuates is the price for traveling. So a lot of people, their appointment is the next week, and we all know getting flights within a week is very expensive. So that's kind of what does it, as well as hotels. So it really depends. I think I spent like $2,000 on 2 plane tickets and a hotel for like 2 days last week. So it's expensive.
So Florida doesn't have this mechanism to get medicine via telemedicine online, and that requires an ultrasound, as you had mentioned, meaning at least one clinic visit and 2 drugs, mifepristone, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, and misoprostol. My nurse wife always makes fun of me because I never pronounce. Yeah. They've been in the news because the Supreme Court ruled unanimously to change nothing about the legal status.
Not yet, because those plaintiffs do not have standing.
Right.
So there's 3 states, I believe, that are still pursuing this. So this is very much not decided completely. Yeah, I mean, yesterday's case was.
But, so right now, those things are still out there, and your website has a good zine actually on SMA, self-managed abortions, and I know that's not really the thing that you guys do, but how do you guys talk about that when somebody approaches you with that at the fund?
Yeah, and I totally forgot to answer your last question about the cooling effect. Yes. We have been experiencing that, so sorry. Yeah, definitely donations.
Has it been dramatic?
Down. Yes. After Dobbs, we were getting like a few $100,000 in donations. We call it rage donations, and it's definitely calmed down through the years since it's not like in the public as much anymore, and more issues have come up. It's an election year, so.
Is there a concern within your organization? Like, when do you hit the panic button?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. I mean, definitely within a few months of 6 weeks, we're going to have to like reassess and see what budget is looking like, and just continue doing fundraisers, applying for grants and things like that. But grants towards like abortion is not really a huge thing out there. So.
And what do you tell people who do ask you about SMAs, self-managed abortions?
Yes. So we don't technically really do much about SMA, but we do have a lot of resources that we send people. So like Plan C pills is a great one for that. And then there's a few hotlines as well. So there's the MNA, which is miscarriage and abortion hotline. And then there's also the If, When, How repro legal helpline, which is very helpful because I mean, there are some legal issues that go around SMA and getting, abortion pills mailed to you in your home state if you're in a banned state.
Okay. And if you're just tuning in, joining us right now, Bree Wallace, Director of Case Management at the Tampa Bay Abortion Fund. We have some phone calls, actually.
Yeah, let's go to
you can hear him in
Jimmy
your
from
headphones there.
Pinellas Park. Jimmy, you're on the air. WMNF here.
Hello.
Hi.
Hey, I'm from here, and thank you, the young lady who's helping people. And I'm a history major from USF, and I never thought they would ever overturn Roe versus Wade.
Yeah, I mean, right. 49 years that law persisted. Yeah,
I was just talking about this on a run this morning.
And the people, I think they live in glass houses. The world isn't perfect, and I had to help a girl when I was in high school to get an abortion, and she just wasn't in a position to have a baby.
Are your friends talking about this, Jimmy? Or is this a point of conversation when you're out and about?
It's not really.
Yeah.
But, it does come up every now and then, and I say the same thing. I never thought they would overturn Roe versus Wade because it took them so long to get to that point, and we're just moving backwards.
Well, again, that's why. Thank you, Jimmy. Of course, we do have the constitutional amendment coming up in November that would, here in Florida, get rid of the 6-week ban and bring it back to point of viability, which is considered roughly, right, Bree, 24 weeks or so, roughly?
Yeah, 24 to 26 sometimes.
Okay. Speaking of Jimmy's point about glass houses, how often do you get somebody maybe from a family that wouldn't ever accept the fact that they got an abortion? Like, how often does that happen to you, and what are those stories like?
That does happen quite a lot, actually. It's people that will tell me that their families are not going to go with them through this, especially when they have to travel, because I'll ask them, do you want someone to travel with you? And it's no, like, my family doesn't even know about this. I don't want them to know about this. And it's extremely sad to see because you do always want your friends and family to be behind you on these decisions, but everyone is definitely in different views, but I always talk them through it as best as I can and just let them know that, like, I'm there for them. And even if their family isn't, like, you have us and you have the clinics that you're going to who care vastly about you. But it is a hard subject to talk about with others, so.
I wonder if you could talk about the logistics of booking travel for for your clients, people who come to you seeking help. Help us understand this ban stretches across much of the South. Yes.
So really, it's kind of different, too. Every case is a little different than the other. First, they have to make an appointment out of state, so I'll send them a few clinics that we work with. We work with specific clinics in specific states and areas just because they have the best logistics, airport-wise, hotel-wise, clinic-wise. So it's really based off that. I'll give them a few to call. They can kind of work out where do they want to go, what days are best for them that they can get an appointment. And then after that, I go through with them. Like, if you're just having a one-day appointment out of state, you're going to go there the day before and leave the day after, just in case anything happens, no delays or anything. So it's kind of just going through that. And then we work with specific hotels through a company called Safe Stays, so it makes it a lot easier. They do a lot of the booking work, and then we just make little itineraries for people, so they have all that information about traveling, about how to check into a hotel, how to get a boarding pass, just really all the background work of traveling.
Wow.
You're like a travel agent.
Yes.
That's crazy.
The New York Times had a story about this whole traveling situation. And Kelly Flynn, who's the chief executive of A Woman's Choice, which has clinics in Florida, North Carolina, Virginia, she said, quote, "It's a logistical nightmare to save patients 2 trips out of Florida. Physicians at her Florida clinic are licensed in North Carolina so they can perform the mandatory counseling before the patient travels north, actually." Bree, you were, I don't want to change the subject, but we just got a text for about this. You were actually contemplating running for state office. We just had a candidate who was running for state legislative office here. This person, Dave, writes in and says that the voters have lost out when you decided not to run for office. You're going to run for a House district seat?
I had a question about that. It's Florida House District 66. You were going to challenge Tracy Koster.
Okay.
And you recently ended that campaign, and you had a good... very thorough message there. You mentioned this memory that you have, by the way, of you waiting in line as a child with your mom to vote for Barack Obama at a library, and you saw how important voting was as you stood in line for hours. But in your statement about ending the campaign, you expressed this frustration with politics in general, specifically this lack of accountability and this prioritization of special interest over constituents in general. And you were really frustrated with the lack of meaningful action or rhetoric when it comes to Palestine, where UN rights experts have said, Israel's committing genocide. But you mentioned how this laser focus on abortion has led some people to lose sight of the rights and experiences of the LGBTQ plus community, specifically when we talk about abortion as a women's issue. Can you expand a bit on some of that? And I don't know if this is the right word for it, but some of those failures or side effects of rallying around abortion in such a polarized climate?
Sure, yeah. And I might sound brash during this, and I honestly don't mean it.
As long as you don't cuss, we're okay.
No, you're good. You're good. And I don't mean it towards anyone in specific. And I do think many of these politicians are doing great right now in their candidacy, but abortion is popular right now. Will it be popular every year? No, but it is right now for people, and a lot of them have it as their number one issue, but they really don't understand the layers to it, the depth of it, and then within those same issues, they'll talk about LGBT rights, but consistently refer to abortion and reproductive health as a woman's issue, in which it is not, because trans people get abortions, non-binary people get abortions, they get pregnant, they give birth, they need birth control, they go to the same OBGYN. So it's really important not to leave them out in that same sentence, So I think that's just kind of hurting the LGBTQ plus community. And just abortion is huge right now, but we're not talking enough about how we're hurting at this moment. Like, we have a 6-week ban right now, and people need access right now, not in November when the election comes around.
I think we have another call. We can sneak one in. I know we're kind of creeping up on like 3 minutes here.
Yeah, let's go to another call. I don't have the name here, but I guess we'll just say, caller, you're on the skinny here. Hello?
Hello?
Well, maybe, did I do that wrong? I thought I hit it.
Maybe it's not right. Let me sneak in a question. Words like feticide, or laws around people who self-manage abortions, and thinking about how the Tampa Bay Abortion Fund talks about people seeking care. What do we say to people locally who find themselves pregnant within the first 6 weeks and after 6 weeks? Like, I just imagine a lot of people listening right now who may be pregnant don't even know what to do. What is the first thing that you tell them once they get through the form and the hotline?
Yeah, so I mean, if you're under 6 weeks, we did a lot of work before this. We are doing at the moment block grants with our clinics because we wanted people to get access immediately. We didn't want to make them have to wait for us, especially with a 6-week ban. Like, there's no time in between. So we have block grants with our clinics locally, so that can help cover people's clinic costs. But a lot of people still reach out to us, and we just let them know, like, these are the clinics we work with. We'll pay for the services there. So that's really it. I mean, you can go to our website and reach out to us with any questions like that. And then same goes for after 6 weeks. You would put in a form. I would usually call you, sometimes text, because a lot of these people are young and do not want to call, and I get it, me either. And I really just go through options about going out of state. Sometimes they will ask about SMA, and I will let them know that I can't legally get too into it, but can definitely give them resources and hotlines to go over that with them. But we are definitely still here to help. Many abortion funds are in Florida, so...
And let's sneak in another phone call.
We've got a couple here. Let's go Sierra and Tampa. Sierra, you're on the air.
Hi. Thank you so much, first of all, for all your hard work. I just wanted to share my story really quick. I come from a very Christian background. My family would not support me in my own journey. When I had to have an abortion, I was alone. This was about 10 years ago. And it was because of health reasons that my doctors told me I would not be able to go full term. And I was already 6 about 8 weeks along when I had to have my abortion, and I was completely alone. I want people to understand how hard it is to make that decision, even when your life is at risk, and how much Planned Parenthood goes through counseling with you and gives you many options and many outs. And that's what I think the Christian or the right-wing community doesn't understand, is how hard it is for people like me who are low income and have no support and no family backing to make that kind of decision that will affect their entire life. And meanwhile, if we are ending this conversation also with the genocide that is going on currently in Palestine, we are killing women and children and not allowing women to have the safe rights that they need to make these decisions and to be able to take care of their families. And for me, you can't be one and the other. You can't be pro-life and also pro-death. I don't understand it. I never will understand it. And I wish that people would be more open-minded. So thank you for all your work, and I hope we can get this ban lifted and that more women can get the care that they need. So thank you for all of your work.
All right, thanks, Sierra.
I think that might be it for us here. Bree Wallace, Director of Case Management at the Tampa Bay Abortion Fund, thank you for joining us. Ashley Brundage at the top half of the show, thank you so much for making time for us today. Please stay tuned to WMNF Tampa. Joellen Schilke is in Studio One with the finest audio art magazine ever on the radio. Art in Your Ear is coming up next. On behalf of myself, Ray Roa, Mitch Perry, and Ben Montgomery, Skip Sassy on the board, Irene on the phones. Thank you so much for listening to WMNF, and I hope you have a really good weekend.